I'm greeting all our students here in Kempton Park, as well as all our students that's listening to the series or to the DVDs. We are still part and busy with the sessions on character restoration. So I'm going to do one of the sessions, and actually this is the last session of this specific module. Now, before we start, we're going to do some group work, and it is something to do also with what you're going to listen to tonight. In your groups, I'm going to ask you that each one of you just say to the rest of the people in your group, if you are a firstborn child and the household you are coming from, or if you are the lastborn child, or maybe your middle child, or the second oldest child, and then after that you tell them what was nice being in that position. Like, I was a lastborn child, and being a lastborn child, there's always somebody older that will pick up the toys. So just be a little bit slow, and somebody else will come and do that. See, so that's what you're going to do. Also, the people listening to the DVDs, switch off at the moment, and then you say it to each other and switch it on again. And if you're a correspondence student, just for a moment think about your position and then say to yourself, what was nice being in that position? Okay, you can move into your groups now and switch off. Thank you. The session we are doing tonight, we call it Identity Formation of a Child. And everything I do tonight is to help you to see the influence that your family and everything that happened in the upbringing of you, in your father's and your mother's house and in your family, the influence it had on your life. So we're going to look at your parents' influence, heredity factors, their mindset influences on your mindset. Later we look at their discipline methods and also their parenting styles. And you will see the effect that had on your life. Now we've asked the question, what forms a child's identity? And the first thing we look at is heredity. The body is the box in which we live. All the characteristics that identify us as a unique physical being have been inherited from our ancestors. Hereditary also provides the potential and limitations for development. Now, just to remind you, the physical and biological composition of the man is called the body. The psychological characteristics are called the soul. And the spirit substance of man is the spirit of the man. And of course, there can be other spirits, called demons, that also can live in your body. Now, the day of conception, when your father, mom, and mother came together, she was a spirit, soul, and a body, and he was a spirit, soul, and body, and they came in total unity together. One sperm of your father united with the egg cell of your mother. It formed the ovum, it developed into embryo, and later also into a baby. Now, the physical characteristics of your dad and mom lie in their genes. Now, you know the genetic things. You have the chromosomes. That means in every nucleus of every cell in your dad's body, every cell, the genetic composition is exactly the same. That's why that one sperm, in that one sperm's nucleus, that means in that cell of that sperm, the whole composition of your father's genetics was in that cell. And exactly the same with your mother. In that egg cell, the full composition of her genetics was in that cell. And that's why when it melted together, we see that you get some of the genetic things from your dad and some from your mom. And that's why you will have some physical characteristics of your dad and some of your mother, and some will be a blend of the two. And isn't it actually wonderful to think that it's only that one sperm cell and that egg cell that at the end, when that melts together, that gives you the characteristics that you have. But it's also important to know that demons can also enter a person through inheritance. Now that is our next module, and you will learn a lot more about that. But it's important to know that you can also, through the bloodline, can you also get some spirits? We say spirits are passed down from the generations within a family, are often called family or familiar spirits. Typically, they have gained entrance to the commitment or of a curse put on an ancestor. Such generational spirits tend to cause similar emotional problems since illnesses or compulsions from generation to generation. So in the first instance, you look like you look today because what you got from your father and your mother. So that is the physical characteristics that you have. And of course, we can look also at other things that you can get through that. But let us look at the environment, the influence of the environment on you, the environment you grew up in. We can say that the environment is defined as the immediate sphere of influence you are born in. That means it's like you stand in the middle of a circle and everything that happens around you, you are influenced by that. We say every person is a consequence of environmental pressures that forges him and determines the following qualities. And there's much more, but let us just look at a few. If we talk about values, you can think if somebody is raised on the platteland or a rural area, and somebody is raised in an inner city or a downtown city, the influence that that person will have on, let us say, on the political views, or maybe the type of churches that were there in that specific town that you were raised. So the things that happened where you were raised had an influence on you. And you can actually only be that was the influences that you had during that time. Your tastes, things you like and dislike. Well, we South Africans, we all like braaivleis. But if you were born in Germany, most probably you would like sauerkraut. Any other taste, the clothes you wear, every taste that you have, you got your taste somewhere from the people around you. Now, people who dislike specific foods, why do you dislike that? Well, most probably it was your dad who often said, this is not nice food. I don't like this. So you pick that up, and that's why you like and dislike some things. We talk about modus operandi. The modus in which we operate are learned traits. That means if you grew up in a household where there was super sensitive, effective emotions every time when there is a conflict, then you will definitely handle conflict differently as somebody else that's coming out of a household that was emotionally stable. Think about, how do you handle conflict? Why do you handle conflict the way you do it? And you will see sometimes you handle it like your mom did it, and sometimes you will do it the way your dad did it. Or you make a choice and say, I'm not going to do it in a specific way, I will do it in another way. But it's the influences of the environment, your parents, the people you grew up with, that formed the way you are acting now. Then goals. Do you have good goals in life? People in highly disciplined homes are likely to govern their lives according to some goals or plans. But a lenient upbringing may result in an undisciplined lifestyle. These people are governed by moods, whims, and circumstances. So think about the household that you're coming out. What are the specific things your parents told you that had a big influence in your life, and that's why you are like you are today? Somebody said, for good or for bad, none of us can avoid showing our family's features and character strengths or weaknesses. The only variable factor is the degree of the influence. So that is the influence of actually forming our mindset of the things that we heard over and over from our parents and the people around us. Then we look for a moment at the birth order. That was what you just spoke about in the beginning. You know that most CEOs of organizations, most presidents of nations, most prime ministers are all firstborn children. Because as you look at the firstborn children, they always pushed forward. They must be the best. And they're very strong goal-orientated. So you will see that the firstborn, most of the time, they tend to be conscientious, well-organized, they're serious, they're goal-orientated, achieving, but they're also people-pleasers, and they believe in authority. That is what we get usually with our firstborn children. Now, the second-born children, they are very interesting. Now, let me just go back to the firstborn again. If you are the firstborn of a specific sex, especially, let us say, the firstborn was a girl, and then the second-born is a boy. Many times, that second-born boy will have some of the firstborn characteristics, especially if he had a dad who pushed him a lot to achieve a lot of things. If you're only child, you will also have the characteristics of the firstborn. And if you are a latecomer or a second generational child, that means you are more than 5 years younger than the sibling that's just in front of you, then you will also have a firstborn child characteristics, because it's like starting a new generation. Now, secondborn, especially if you are the secondborn of a specific sex, that means that the secondborns, or let us say the middle childs, they usually look up to the older brothers and sisters because they are the role model. They see them in action. And as they look at the firstborn, they develop their own style of living. Sometimes we get this firstborn that's just doing everything right. So the secondborn can decide not to do everything right, because if you get a lot of attention when you do everything right, I must do something to get attention, so I don't do everything right. If the firstborn is rebellious, then the secondborn can decide, well, I will be the one that do everything right. And the secondborns and the middle children, they usually do things so that they can get attention. Because, you see, when there's a baby also, the babies get a lot of attention. And your last-born children, they are typically the outgoing charmers, personable manipulators. They're affectionate, uncomplicated, and sometimes a little absent-minded. They have a good life. They're the baby in the home. And mommy and daddy wish this baby the whole time small. So he's actually small the whole time, and he can just enjoy life. So you see the firstborn, who must always in front, doing everything right, the baby in the house, and then you have all the rest of them in the middle. And the middle children must fight for a position so that mommy and daddy can see them. Now, we can laugh about that because it's actually very interesting to really to go into this. But to see in your own household, what was the positive things to be in that position, but what was the negative things? I was the last-born of 4 children, but we were very close to each other. And one of the things that I remember that I didn't like is that I always felt that because I'm the youngest, whatever I say, that will not count. Because everybody knows more, everybody has more experience. So that was really something that I had to overcome as an adult, to realize whatever I say, it can count. So you could think in your own life, what was hurtful of being in the position you were? And then we go to the process of becoming a person, because we are now still talking about the development of your identity. How did it come that you are what you are? As from the moment of conception, your 5 senses took up information, everything they heard. Being still in your mother's womb, you heard stuff, you felt the emotions. And after that, every bad thing, every good thing that happened, it came into your mind, you heard it, you felt it. All the traumas and crises you lived through, everything is still in your subconscious mind. If you picked up fear as a little child, that will be part of your personality for the rest of your life. Now, remember, we're talking about the things that formed your personality. Now, of course, we know that if we realize something is wrong, I can get healing from that, and I can get rid of things. But that's why that's what this session is about, is to help you to realize there's certain things that happen in your past, in your family, with your parents, that had maybe a negative influence in your life, so that you can get rid of that. And then we get deliberate mind control. That is things that other people come and they put into your mind deliberately so that they can actually control you or to do things they would like you to do. And usually there are some money in for them. That's why they want to control you. If we look at the media, they say that children, about 6 hours per day, they spend listening to media. That can be TV, that can be video games, that can be music. And they say the teenagers, they can make use of 2 of the mediums together, and that means they can listen to music and they can play games. Music, they say music has the power of forming our character. Think about the type of music you listened when you were young. Did you listen to music with negative words? The influence it had on you for what you are today. The internet. I think most children, 99% of children today, have some access to the internet. If it's not a computer, then it can be their cell phone. And they say that the average exposure to pornography today is 5-year-olds. Now, I know Sarah spoke already about pornography and sexual things, but you must realize that the big thing behind pornography is money, is to make money. They say it's the thing in the world at the moment that make the people the most rich. So it's about what other people can get out of that, and they know that it is highly addictive, and that's why they make it so accessible and so easy. Video games. If you think about the video games you played, and maybe your children play, and the effect that it have on the forming of your character. So this is mind control that is coming from the outside. And then we talk about deliberate education, and that is going to school and the stuff you have to learn. You have to learn maybe about different culture groups or different churches and the effect it had on you and why you wanted to learn more about specific things. That had everything to do with deliberate education that came to you. With that, I also just want to mention to you what is also formed in your personality during certain seasons in your life. Before birth, the circumstances under which sexual unity took place, if there was a lot of love or not a lot of love, if there was a lot of pain, maybe fear, so you as a baby picked it up. During birth, the type of birth influences a child's personality in a specific manner. They say babies who are born with instruments, most of the time are insecure and fearful. Then they say cesarean babies, because they don't fight during the birth, most probably they can become a passive adult one day. Newborn babies who were taken away from their mother experience a lot of rejection. Maybe they were put into an incubator or the mother was very sick. But they experience a lot of rejection because during that time it's so important for them to get a lot of love and to love a lot of physical touch. Now, they say that a baby's brain, the first 6 months after a baby was born, is still, the cells in the brain are still multiplying. And then the 6 months after that, or after that, the brain is still developing. And that's why it's so important during just after birth that the baby must get good food and there must be a lot of communication with the baby so that the baby's brain can develop very well. Now you can think about your own life. What do you know about during that time in your life? And then as a baby later on, the mother plays a very important role, especially the first 6 months after a baby is born. And if the mother is immature and do not understand the cry of the baby, it can bring a lot of harm to that baby. Because the first 6 months, a baby is just reacting the whole time on instinct. And the mother actually, if you see that whole thing that happened, the mother's instinct is to react respond relationship with the baby. So as the baby cries, the mother responds on that, and her instinct tells her what's wrong with the baby. The first year of the baby, we cannot really say that a baby is naughty during that time, because the whole time is just instinct from the baby. And that's why it's so important to give a lot of love to babies and a lot of physical touch. Then let us get to the toddler stage. Now, toddler stage is the stage where we must set boundaries for children, and discipline. Developing your discipline during these years with children are so important. If you lose your child during the toddler years, and maybe I must ask that your parents lose you during the toddler years of discipline, because if you cannot discipline a toddler, then for the rest of their life you will see the same problems in them. Then during the school years, friends and teachers' opinions are like imprints on the personality of school children. Unfortunately, many fathers leave their families, and many boys are actually raised by a predominantly female environment. Now, imprinted in your genes, because men are XY chromosomes, imprinted into that is the specific masculine characteristics. But if you are raised by females, they actually change your way of thinking, because there's a way of thinking with men that definitely differ from women. So we actually change their way of thinking. Men become, and I'm not talking about gay now, I'm talking about men that start being more emotional. They care about the emotions of others. Now, men are usually not like that. And in the chromosome of XY, in the development of that, that's why men, we say that they can think in a compartment. They don't look at everything like an open plan. We as women, we can live open plan. We see everything and we can work out everything. We say men go in one room, close the door, and you can work in that room, get out of that room in the next room. But you see, God created men like that. So that's why they can be so efficient in their work. That's why we need each other when we are in a conflict. We cannot think exactly the same. Then we will come nowhere. And that's why it's important that boys must be raised by fathers also. Otherwise, we change the behavior. And they become like women. And that's why when they get married, the woman said, but he's not a man. He's a man, but he was just changed in his thinking. All right. And then also the youth. Youth needs a lot of physical touch and love from their parents. And many parents, when the children grow into their youth years, withhold physical touch and love from their children. But they need a lot of connection, acceptance, and nurturing from the parents. And it's also important to motivate teens to carry through with what they started. Otherwise, they will not set good goals and stay with that. Now, I want to talk to you also a little bit about child abuse, because all of us in some way, somewhere go through some sort of child abuse. But to understand why is child abuse wrong, it's important for you to understand what is the right thing. What is the basic need of every child? What was your basic need as a child? And did you get it from the parents? And then you will understand what is child abuse. The most important basic need for all children is unconditional love. Now, this unconditional love is not only that the father and mother must love the child unconditionally, but it's also that the father and mother must love each other unconditionally. There's a very interesting statistics that I read during this week, and I want you to listen to that. They say in a household where the father and mother love each other, and the father and mother love the children, there's only a 5% chance that the children in that household can have psychological problems. And that can happen because of trauma or whatever happened. When the father and mother love each other, but there's a problem in the parent-child relationship. But the children see the mother and father love each other. Then they see there's a 25% of psychological problems. But interesting, where the parents do not love each other, and that can be a divorced household, but the father or mother love the child, they say the percentage then is 40%. So it looks like as if it gives more security when the parents love each other than the parent just love the child. And then they say in households where there's no love, father, mother doesn't love each other, there's no love towards the children, the percentage is 90%. So if you look at people around you and you see people with psychological problems, we understand why it is. And that's everything to do with unconditional love. Unconditional love is to say, I love you. Doesn't matter what mistakes you make. And we're going to look at that, what that means. Unconditional love is to connect with somebody. Now, connection means to have a closeness, to be as family together, to talk to each other, sit at a table and talk to each other, to eat together, do things together. That is where we get connection. Acceptance is that I feel accepted by my parents in spite of what I'm doing wrong. Maybe I'm not the best athlete. Maybe my older brother or sister, he or she is better. Maybe my grades are not so good. Do I still feel, did you still feel that your parents love you unconditionally? Or did you have that feeling, I'm not good enough, I'm not going to make it, maybe somebody else is better? You know, sometimes when I work with people and they tell me that the grades are higher than 80% to 90%, but it's never good enough. And then I realize this person for the rest of his life will always feel, I'm never good enough. What happened in your household? Did you feel that you are loved unconditionally? Nurture. Your nurture is actually enhancing the climate in which you grow up. That means with a lot of laughter, with a lot of stress. What was the emotions in the household that you grew up? Because that gives you the feeling that I am nurtured as a child. Nurturing and physical contact feed the emotions of a child. And you know, the opposite of nurturing is abuse. If you didn't receive unconditional love, if there wasn't connection, if you didn't feel accepted, if you were not nurtured, then it means you were abused. And now we're coming quickly to look at the types of abuse that we get. Emotional child abuse, and I've written specific things down here because I want you to see what is emotional abuse. And you must know that emotional abuse can severely damage a child's mental health and social development. Let us see. Constant belittling, shaming, and humiliating of a child. Calling names and making negative comparisons to others. Telling a child he or she is no good, worthless, bad, or a mistake. Frequent yelling, threatening, or bullying. Ignoring or rejecting a child as punishment. Giving him or her the silent treatment. Limited physical contact with the child, no hugs, kisses, or other signs of affection, exposing the child to violence or the abuse of others, whether it is the abuse of a parent, a sibling, or even a pet. And you can think for yourself, what happened with you as a child? Did these things happen to you? Then we talk about child neglect. That is failing to provide for a child's basic needs. And we talk about food, clothing, hygiene, supervision, or whatever. You know, some children has to raise the other children. Mother and father never at home, so the oldest child must raise the other children. And you will see later tonight when we talk about parenting styles, that these are the parenting styles that help us to raise criminals. If parents are not the supervision person over the children. Okay, physical child abuse, that's any physical abuse. It can be to burn the child with a cigarette, pushing the child over, clapping the child, or whatever. And I'm going to speak later tonight on how to discipline your child and to understand how do we discipline. Because if we don't do it correctly, then it is abuse. Then we talk about sexual abuse. It's important to recognize that sexual abuse doesn't always involve body contact. Exposing a child to sexual situations or material is sexually abusive, whether or not touching is involved. When a child is about 4 years old, that part of them develop of realizing that there are boys and girls and they look differently. And it's most probably during these years that they will touch each other and try everything to see how's it working, because mine is not working like yours. And if we as parents miss it and think that's a sexual thing and discipline our children on that, then we abuse our children. On the other hand, if there's sexual abuse, meaning that children see sex, or they see the sexual side of the sex organs, then it's also abuse. Because there's a normal development of children to see that I'm different from somebody else. And I can tell you, if they're not abused children, when they that age and they touch each other, it's just to see, why are you different like me? And there's no sexual things involved with that. And then also with sexual molestation, aside the physical damage that sexual abuse can cause, the emotional component is powerful and far-reaching. Sexual abuse children are tormented by shame and guilt. And I'm not going a lot into sexual abuse. Maybe we will do it in the next module. But that is the most harmful thing that can happen to a child. It's really, really killing a child totally, spirit, soul, and body. And the healing from somebody who was sexually molested, it's really a long-term thing. And we're going to see some of the severe results just now. But other factors that we must also look at when we talk about child abuse is because children will be abused in these situations. Domestic violence, children will be abused there. Alcohol and drug abuse by the parents. Untreated mental illness of parents. These parents will abuse their children. Parents who lack parenting skills. They say that mothers that's very young, I'm talking about 15, 16, 17-year-old, they're too immature to raise their own babies. And usually mothers who abuse their children physically is usually very young mothers. And the reason is because they're still so immature, they don't understand the development of the baby. This baby is just like a toy in the beginning. So after 3 months, they think this toy must become now more mature. And they think the baby must be more developed than it is. And that's usually the reason why they abuse their babies. Parents who are under a lot of stress and lack support in their own life. Maybe father lost his work. There's a lot of stress. And all of this will go over to the children. Parents involved in occult Satanism or Freemasonry. And then I just want to mention 2 severe results of child abuse. The first one is reactive attachment disorder. Now, usually, when we see children like this, they are actually already a criminal. They're not in contact with their own emotions, and they cannot show empathy or sympathy. So they're just like criminals. And that's the result of severe abuse. On the other hand, we can get dissociation. Dissociation happens when the pain is so overwhelming. It can be physical or emotional pain. It's so overwhelming. That's my identity, my personality, my emotions has to split so that my body can take the pain, but my emotions is not feeling the pain. And that's why some people will have amnesia of most of the childhood years, and that's the reason, because they have a split personality, which I'm not going to explain to you tonight, but they can have very much detail about certain parts of what happened there, because some of the parts remember the pain. And and people with dissociation become easily codependent in friendships and causes distrust between friends, and they cannot build healthy relationships. just to give you a few things to explain to you what happened to people when they are abused. And we are now at the end of the first part of our session tonight, but I want you to sit for just one moment before we close the session. I just want you to think for one moment from everything that you've heard until now. What influences were there in your life that you realized tonight that was wrong? And it's not about your mother or your father or your uncle or opa. That's not what it's about. It's about what happened in your life that was wrong and has to change. You see, the first step to healing and to change is to recognize that. And the moment you recognize that, then you can make a decision, say, I'm going to work on this thing. And it's only between yourself and maybe ask the Lord just to help you for a moment. Let us just sit a moment. Holy Spirit, I ask you that you just softly speak to every person now that's listening. Help them, Lord, to see anything that happened in their lives. Abuse, maybe a wrong mindset. Maybe a mindset of racism. Hatred towards people not looking like I am. Maybe hatred towards leaders, or whoever, Lord. Thank you, Holy Spirit. And thank you, Lord, that you are a gracious God and you're going to help each person to work through things that they have to get rid of to become more and more like you. Thank you, Holy Spirit. Amen. Okay, now we can switch off the DVDs for our groups, and the rest of you can go and drink some coffee. Let us make it 15 minutes, and then we're back. Thank you.